It's been a wild year for the Dallas Mavericks. They traded away arguably the greatest talent in franchise history, who was just 25 at the time, because defense wins championships and the future doesn't exist, according to Nico Harrison. So at that point, all hope seemed lost. But then, suddenly and miraculously, the future got a lot brighter as the lottery balls bounced Dallas's way and landed them the #1 overall pick and one of the most highly touted prospects in recent memory, Cooper Flagg. But as much of a boon as that was, the roller coaster continues, and things have not gone according to plan for the Mavs so far this season. In the absence of Kyrie Irving, who won't be back for months still after he tore his ACL in March, and with Anthony Davis even missing the last few games due to a calf injury, Dallas is struggling, sitting at just 2-6 and dead last in offensive rating. And with a huge amount on his plate, Flagg has not lived up to his lofty expectations so far. His box score production has been fine, just a tick below what I would have expected, but his efficiency has been rough, and his offense hasn't been consistent enough given what Dallas needs from him right now. But is that his fault? Or has he been put in such a difficult spot that it goes past what even he, at 18 years old, should reasonably be expected to handle? Well, the first challenge that Dallas has presented to Flagg is having him act as the point guard for this struggling offense. That is where he started every game until last night when the Mavs finally started D'Angelo Russell alongside him, but still, they closed the game in the all-important moments with Flagg back at point guard. This experiment is going on for two reasons. Out of sheer desperation, given Kyrie's injury and the lack of ball handling talent on the roster, but more importantly, for the long-term development of Flagg as a primary ball handler. The reason I can confidently say the latter has taken priority is because both Flagg and the Mavericks offense have performed dramatically better when there's an actual point guard on the floor. His efficiency has also been brutal out of pick and roll and isolation, where a primary ball handler is most expected to create advantages for their offense. Whereas his efficiency across all other play types averaged out has actually been pretty good. And although the sample size is very small, these numbers are ridiculously striking and very much line up with the eye test and logic, because Flagg is just not ready to be a primary ball handler for a serious NBA offense at this moment. By the way, this is not damning nor a revelation. In fact, it was almost a given coming into the year. Flagg's offense has been a little bit rougher than I expected, but I repeatedly said that in Kyrie's absence, he would be overtasked, forced under immense pressure and in difficult circumstances to try to figure out the area of his game that requires the biggest adjustment and is actually furthest away. After all, Flagg's greatest appeal as a prospect has always been his versatility, his ability to do everything on the court well, not his ability to just float an offense with the ball in his hands, especially not as a 6'9", 18-year-old. So the Mavs have asked him to do something he's simply not ready to do, and probably the biggest reason he's not ready is that Flagg's handle itself is not tight or functional enough yet for him to be a primary ball handler. Here, Flagg loses his handle in pretty routine pick and roll situations, and here he gets flat out stripped pretty easily as he attempts a crossover. These are not primary ball handler NBA turnovers. These are 6'9", 18-year-old for whom the handle is the biggest area in need of improvement, which was clear even when he was a prospect, turnovers. Another consequence of this somewhat shaky handle, when paired with his lack of a high-end first step, is that Flagg cannot reliably get by quality perimeter defenders off the dribble, and his life is only made harder by the fact that he is facing a whole lot of quality perimeter defenders because he's being thrust into this position as his team's #1 creator. With Kyrie out, Flagg is overwhelmingly drawing the opposing team's best perimeter defender. He's getting heavy doses of Lou Dort, Stephon Castle, the Thompson twins, some of the toughest matchups in basketball, testing his biggest question mark repeatedly. One of the problems born out of Flagg's discomfort working against these defenders is that he's doing too much idle dribbling. This is not how primary ball handlers operate in today's NBA. They attack, they get into an action quickly, they create an advantage. Flagg is instead stagnantly eating up time as he tries to set up an action to develop for a teammate. And while I don't dislike the idea to have Powell set a back screen for the shooter here, the problem is that if you're dribbling in place and then pick up your dribble as you're staring down the developing action, Castle knows exactly where you're going with the ball, and he deflects it. Here's another possession where Flagg is again idly dribbling versus an elite perimeter defender, and he then attempts a predictable pass to the wing, which gets picked off again. And even if it hadn't, he was going to be putting the offense in a bad spot with under 5 seconds on the shot clock. This is a spot where Dallas needs him to be the guy who can make the play, and instead, he's looking to defer. So this is how you get some of the really quiet Flagg stretches and performances. 2 points in the first half against the Spurs, 2 points in the game against OKC. He is not confident in his ability to create advantages on ball against these really good perimeter defenders, so he can just fade away a bit. But even when Flagg is more aggressive on ball, he still has his issues as a scorer. He can settle for jumpers a bit more than I'd like. This is again related to his handling limitations and lack of an elite first step. Castle stays in front of him really well here, so he has to force this tough jumper. And Flagg has been below average as a jump shooter so far, hitting 29% of his threes and under 32% of his 2-point jumpers. But although Flagg is not a stellar jump shooter yet, I think these numbers have as much to do with shot quality as they do shot making skill. After all, he is coming off a collegiate season in which he shot 39% from 3 and 84% from the free throw line and showed clear improvement as a jump shooter. But this season, 70% of Flagg's jump shot attempts have come off the dribble. That's a lot. Last year, more than half his jump shots came off the catch. And those off the dribble jumpers are tough shots, especially because although Flagg can rise up and fire over top of defenders when, say, coming off a handoff, he is not a natural space creator at this point, somebody who can free himself up with a step back or a dynamic dribble combination. His reliance on size over space creation means he also prefers shooting mid-range pull-ups to three-point pull-ups, and he's just not good enough at those shots to make that a route to good offense. All the while, he's taken a grand total of 4 unguarded catch-and-shoot jump shots this season. Those open jumpers he'd benefit from greatly are not being created for him, so unsurprisingly, he's struggling with jump shooting efficiency. But when he does drive, Flagg has also had issues. He's at times been out of control. Ball pressure, especially from an elite athlete like Asar Thompson, can speed him up, and he's just not quick enough to ever turn the corner on him here, so he forces up a tough look on the drive. And ironically here, after Dort's ball pressure forces Flagg to almost lose his handle, he's actually able to get a step as Dort reaches, but this is an out-of-control, rushed attempt against a good rim protector. To be fair, this play was also not well spaced around him. PJ should have kept drifting to this corner to make himself available for Flagg to make a kickout pass here. So Flagg could have been more under control and done better, but so could those around him. But Flagg has barreled into elite rim protectors only to get turned away a few times already, and overall, he can better manage his pace on drives and get craftier about drawing fouls. That nuance of his driving game has a ways to go. But Flagg has also just flat out had issues finishing at the basket. He's currently shooting just 49% at the rim. That's a 7th percentile number. Really ugly efficiency, especially considering he's a big athletic forward, and he has shot just 35% on layups, a 3rd percentile number. Rim touch was an area for improvement for Flagg as a prospect. His efficiency on layups in college was slightly below average, but some of these misses are inexcusable, and this has to get better. He's also particularly struggling on drives going right, which is consistent with last year when he was more comfortable and effective driving to his left. The other aspect of his driving arsenal that Flagg needs to polish is his floater range shot making. He's made just 39% of his shots inside the paint but outside the restricted area, and he hasn't really fine-tuned his touch in this zone. We saw him miss a couple of these shots long and flat last game, and they didn't look super natural for him. But that Pelicans game was also the most we've seen him deliberately manipulating pace out of pick and roll and using a hostage dribble to keep the defender on his back, definitely navigating the paint to get to these uber important shots against drop coverage. So that was encouraging. He just has to refine the shot making there. So clearly, there are areas in which Flagg needs to improve offensively. In fact, he could stand to get better at putting the ball in the basket as an on-ball creator in pretty much every way. But again, this is not shocking. He's not somebody I ever would have classified as an elite shot maker or an elite ball handler or an elite self-created finisher. At least not at this moment. But the Mavs are putting him in a position where he has to try to be all of those things, and they're making him do so in hellish offensive circumstances, frequently playing him without another viable ball handler and in all-around atrocious offensive groups. Like, the Mavs started the year with a double center starting lineup, which presents obvious spacing issues, but Derek Lively's injury after 3 games forced them out of that look, and then AD got hurt a couple games later. So, since then, they've been without by far their best player and their top 2 big man talents, which sucks, but at least it's allowed them to get more shooting on the floor, right? Not really, no. The Mavericks are currently 28th in three-point percentage and dead last in three-pointers made. In fact, they're making the fewest threes per game of any team over the last 5 years. So the spacing around him has been poor, the shooting has been abysmal, and they desperately lack other creators. They're quite literally not good at anything on offense. Hilariously, despite their whole gimmick coming into the year basically being, look how huge we are, the Mavs are even dead last in offensive rebound rate, an area Flagg could perhaps be helpful if he wasn't being asked to play point guard. So clearly, Flagg has his issues as a scorer and creator right now, and some of those issues have been a bit more pronounced than I expected. But asking him to not just succeed individually, but to save this situation is absurd. But Flagg is still a supremely talented young player, so how can the Mavs put him in better positions to succeed by leaning into what he's already doing well? First, Flagg's greatest offensive strength is easily his transition play at this point. He's legitimately awesome in the full court, unsurprisingly so considering he's 6'9", athletic, and handles well for his size, so he's excellent scoring downhill while pushing pace himself or filling a lane, and he's a very heads-up transition passer. With a runway and tons of space to work with, he's clearly at his best, so playing with pace should be a top priority to make life easier on Flagg on offense. Flagg also has clear mismatch attacking potential. Although he's listed at point guard, he is 6'9", and he has the ability to use his size and strength as a driver to punish teams for trying to guard him with true slider point guards like Bub Carrington or Emmanuel Quickley, both of whom he was able to overpower in back-to-back games to get into the paint consistently. Flagg has also been crazy efficient out of the post. The sample size is so small, but he's posted up 7 times this year and has scored on 6 of them. He also used the post game selectively in college, but was extremely efficient doing so then too, because he uses it to abuse mismatches. I absolutely love that he hunted Reed Shepherd on back-to-back possessions here, bullying him out of the post. Flagg is big, strong, and skilled enough that he should be able to make a killing off of targeting guards like this off switches, both now and throughout his career. This may always be where he's at his best as a scorer in the half court. Here, Flagg takes this pitch back in stride, which gets him downhill momentum that he then turns into post-up bully ball over the smaller Champagny. This is great execution, putting him in an advantageous position to use his strengths. Generally, I really like handoffs as a way to get Flagg a bit of a step on his man with some momentum, whether that flows into a full-on drive or him rising up for a cleaner mid-range jumper when he's already moving as he catches the ball and can then use the screen with momentum. There's built-in separation there compared to when he starts from a stagnant pick and roll. And I believe the Mavs should be doing everything they can to build in those advantages for Flagg, get him moving off ball where he's looked comfortable, and alleviate the pressure he has to create those advantages from a standstill over and over where he struggled. And perhaps the biggest favor they can do Flagg is just playing him more with point guards, a change they seem to be slowly embracing. As mentioned earlier, the statistical difference for Flagg and the team is massive, and it just makes sense. He and they need another ball handler, another playmaker, somebody who can create dribble penetration and knock down pull-up jumpers and take pressure off of Flagg. Even if that player is as flawed as D'Angelo Russell in the Big 2025, that skill set makes a huge difference for this team. It also allows them to tap into more of Flagg's prized versatility and off-ball skills. Like, I want to see him used more as a screener. He's gotten a couple good looks off of setting ghost screens for D'Lo, and he makes a beautiful short roll read here. He's a really gifted passer, and this allows him to make a read off a paint touch without having the burden of being the ball handler. So it's this sort of malleability that makes Flagg special, and we need to see them leaning into that way more. So, although he clearly has his flaws, it feels like the Mavs have made life as hard on Flagg as humanly possible, and I understand that the priority with playing him at point guard is his long-term development. But still, is throwing Flagg to the Wolves like this really beneficial, or is this task so difficult beyond reason that it could maybe sabotage his confidence, or at the very least, isn't actually that applicable to what his long-term role and circumstances will look like? After all, not only is the offense around him really, really bad, I've never seen Flagg down the line as a heliocentric primary ball handler or an elite on-ball scorer. Of course, I expect him to take on significant on-ball duties, but I've always felt his unique value would come from, again, his versatility, operating as a top 2 ball handler for a team while also bringing excellent off-ball feel, cutting, screening, offensive rebounding, shooting off the catch, closeout attacking, mismatch attacking, connective passing, transition scoring. All the traits that tie things together, which are often harder to find with a star talent and make him an excellent complement to anyone else. All the while, he's bringing elite defense. And we can't forget that while today's video is all about his offensive game, defense was Flagg's greatest selling point as a prospect. Ultimately, my belief is this: Flagg will benefit from a significant number of on-ball reps early in his career. They are important, and he has to take some bumps and bruises to learn and improve there, no question. But there's a balance to be struck here. No matter what, this team needs Flagg to do a lot on offense. That's just the reality with their personnel, especially in Kyrie's absence. But I don't believe they need to force him into an even bigger, harder role. I believe he'd be better suited as a secondary ball handler, still getting a good number of on-ball reps, but also tapping into his off-ball skill set more, which will always be an important part of his game and will make him more effective right now, and it allows them to get more offensive talent on the floor in the form of a D'Angelo Russell. I also do believe that having Kyrie on the floor, an actual star point guard, will make Flagg's life significantly easier and slot him into a better role. And I also believe that Flagg will simply grow more comfortable and get better as the year goes on regardless. It will never be harder than it is right now. He is 18 years old, currently being asked to play out of position and act as the primary ball handler, drawing opposing teams' best perimeter defenders with perhaps the worst offensive supporting cast in basketball right now alongside him. He's the youngest player in the NBA, one of the youngest in league history, and we're only 8 games into the season. And if we look back to last year at Duke, when he was a 17-year-old, suddenly expected to be the best player in all of college basketball, he struggled early on, then made dramatic improvements and did indeed finish as the best player in the nation, living up to, if not exceeding, the hype. he will get better as the year goes on. And even last night, he had 20 points, 9 boards, and 5 stocks. He started alongside a point guard for the first time and attempted what was by far a career-high 19 field goals, playing perhaps his most aggressive and confident on-ball game yet. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and his progress may not be linear, but it will be there. So, is he currently the top 50 kind of player I thought he'd be this season? No. But can he be that by the end of the year, once he's gotten his feet under him and is in the right role? Yeah, I think that's possible. And regardless, I believe Flagg's skill set is so well-rounded and valuable for today's NBA, and he is such a competitor who has so consistently shown an ability to play up, embrace challenges, and improve, that no matter what circumstances Dallas puts him in right now, he is going to be a great player in this league.